AI might or might not be able to do. We haven't talked enough about how AI actually does it. And what I mean by that is the customer experience. You have two AI technologies, and on one of them, you're going in, you're doing your chat GPT, and you're typing in your prompts, and you're doing all that stuff, and it's producing a great result. You have another one that you're talking to an avatar. The avatar is coming back with everything. It's not doing anything in addition to option A, but it's creating that customer experience, the wow factor. You talked about the NVIDIA example. It wasn't just what they were doing, it was how they were doing it. And I think one of the things that we're going to see moving forward is not just this is what AI will do, but this is the experience it creates for you. And that experience is going to be a defining factor in many areas between the companies that succeed and the companies that don't.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. No, thank you for that. I totally agree. I mean, we talk a lot about functionality. We're talking about workflows every day. And to be honest with you, I'm still seeing a lot of people, there's that adage, and Jason, you know this one too, from the product side. When a new technology comes out, they apply the new technology the way they applied the old technology. So, right. So we go in to do pilots and someone says, hey, I want an onboarding agent. And, the conversation is about taking the exact same onboarding workflow and then using AI to, just maybe deliver that when, a database and, an automation will still work fine. There's really an opportunity to create a blank page for every single internal workflow and product workflow in your business to understand what the user or customer requires, what their desired outcomes are, where the value lives, and to understand how AI can be used to create a completely new workflow, but a completely new experience and value proposition, right? So I think you're 100% right on that. Okay. So we've spent an hour talking about why the movie fits. I want to spend a little bit of time, talking about how the SaaS parallel isn't perfect, where the analogy breaks down. I'm just going to go through a few of these. The first one is speed, right? SaaS took 7 to 8 years, and we've talked about this already. We've talked about how it's going faster, but SaaS took 7 to 8 years from the first wave to dominance. AI is moving faster because the infrastructure is already commoditized, the distribution channels already exist, and the sales cycles are shorter. The SaaS apocalypse hit roughly 18 months after the AI agents became enterprise viable. Siebel took 5 years to fade, but ServiceNow shipped agentic ACV just 6 weeks after the crash. The compression is absolutely real. The second place the analogy breaks down is labor, right? So SaaS replaced a cost line, and this is just, we can debate this. AI replaces a capability line, which makes it, I think, much more disruptive and a lot more politically sensitive. We're all skirting that conversation about everybody being unemployed, right? Every conversation I'm in. The Klarna story is, I think, a parable, right? The AI worked, but the labor restructuring was harder than the technology. I'm sure they'll figure it eventually, but most companies, I think in the short to midterm, are going to land where Klarna did. Hybrid with flexible contract humans, not where they thought they'd land. So, Rod, you've watched channel labor markets shift through every transition. How's the AI labor question actually showing up in conversations? What are partners saying that they're not saying publicly, or what are people saying that privately that they're not saying publicly?
I mean, I think one of the most interesting conversations I had with a partner recently was someone who had, they do a lot of software development for their customers. And he said, look, Rod, I had 60 software developers, 60 coders in the company. He said, I now have 20. I'm producing more and better code than I did with 60. He said, my goal is basically to fill my retirement fund in the next 2.5 years, because after that, I won't be able to charge for 60 coders like I'm doing at the moment. The pricing will come down to recognize the fact I've only got 20 coders, and my margins are going to shrink enormously as a result of that.
Wow. Wow. I don't know if any of you guys want to build on that, but that's amazing. Yeah, I think we all feel that. I definitely feel that there's this 2 to 3 year window where you kind of have to either establish yourself or individually and as maybe as a business, find your way so that you can make money afterward. It's this stratification, everybody from a company to individual. It's interesting. All right.
I think it's going to be much wider than that, Cosmo. I mean, we've just had an election in the UK.
Yeah.
And some very important elections, for example, in Scotland and Wales. And the reason I bring that up is if you heard everyone talking, I only heard AI mentioned twice.
Wow.
It is going to have a huge societal impact, and the powers that be don't appear to have a clue what's going on. And I think that's going to lead to some real challenges as we move forward.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I think, Rod, that's a very important point. Is I think there's, you could lean in multiple directions when it comes to your political views, but one of the things that the government should be good at is infrastructure. And I think you used that word earlier on in the conversation, that AI is a net new infrastructure. Absent, the government or other kind of formal institutions helping to define some guardrails around this new infrastructure, then ultimately we leave it to guys like us in the tech industry, which, between the four of us, I don't think guys like me are the most appropriate to be establishing societal infrastructure.
I was listening to a guy yesterday. He worked at Meta. He worked at OpenAI, and his prediction is that, you have a license to drive a car, you have license to go fishing, you have licenses to do all kinds of things, and that we're going to see licensing for AI for just all kinds of different use cases and use levels, and at an attempt to try to regulate. So we'll see. I'm interested. I think we should do an entire podcast on what you just talked about, Rod, the political, the societal implications. I mean, it is we're all thinking about it. So we'll go there. All right. I want to keep this tight. The third place, I want to talk about the analogy breaking down is the trust threshold, right? And we mentioned this already. Nobody worried that Salesforce would hallucinate a customer record, right? In regulated industries, especially banking, healthcare, right? Insurance. This isn't perception, it's compliance. And, in healthcare, it's people's lives. We have a healthcare client, and believe me, I worry. Like, I don't worry, but I very careful about all the decisions that we're making, because you're dealing with people's health and their records and those types of things. So, Goldman can draft a 95% of an IPO prospectus with AI, but a human still has to sign it. So here's the thing: the productivity loss headlines that the productivity loss headlines miss. Goldman's IPO and M&A bankers are on pace for their biggest pay gains in years. I found this really interesting, and Jason, I'm really curious. I'm going to go to Nick, but I want to hear what you say. AI compresses the junior analyst tier, right? It's just compressed that. It doesn't eliminate the banker. It pushes more value up to senior judgment, which is monetizable. And we're not just seeing that in banking. We're seeing that at enterprise level. So, Nick, Zoom partners with regulated industries. You partner and your partners partner with in these regulated industries every day. How is that trust threshold showing up in your sales motion, and where are people getting stuck?
So if I could give the partner community some advice on how to build that practice. We've talked about the AI services model and the emerging.
Yeah.
But if you take anything away from what I'm about to share with you, this is really probably the most important piece from me personally during this, is that the trust threshold is real, especially for regulated industries. So what does a partner need to do? Partner needs to be able to prove that the AI performed compliantly. Takeaway number one. There's tools out there. This is why our sales motion starts with governance, not features. We lead with things like Zoom Compliance Manager, native capture, e-discovery, legal hold, data residency controls. So partners can show auditors exactly how the AI decisions are logged and contained. Remember, there's this fear factor. So if you have the ability and can demonstrate that trust, because trust has to be a design principle, not a check back, right? Partners need to be able to articulate how the data flows. Then don't shy away from the compliance officer. Bring them into the room early and show that AI outputs are traceable and human verified. You know, we just talked about the whole labor impact and all of the above. This is where, and I'm going to date myself now, is I look to my 6 and 4-year-old grandchildren like, what is going to be their careers?
Yeah.
And my little 6-year-old, I'm like, buddy, I'm going to teach you everything about analytics. I'm going to teach you everything about automation. And because that's kind of that the human verification is not going to go away.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the breakthrough of the compliance officer, whether it's in banking, healthcare, public sector. The win pattern is the exact same.
Yeah.
Transparency first, automation second. And once trust is earned, scale follows. So build an AI performed compliant model, put the infrastructure in so you can trace your human verification, and make sure that your design principles are checkable. If you have that at the forefront of your practice, you will come out with a very unique opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if any of you guys want to dive in on that. I saw some nods, but I completely agree.
Yeah, I think I would echo what Nick said from a solution topology perspective, from a product perspective. The analogy that I like to use, you know, echoing the governance as kind of a fundamental requirement, is the way that I like to think about effective AI is to think of a beehive. And, you know, what I advocate to customers that I work with is, you know, your people / you should always be the queen bee. And if you think about how a beehive operates, the queen bee is the one that makes all the decisions, you know, carries all the judgment, but she has available to her an army of worker bees. Each one of those worker bees does a highly specific job. In doing that, she scales, you know, the capabilities of the hive. And second of all, it also limits the blast radius of risk of any one of those individual worker bees. So that kind of architecture of how best to deploy in a, you know, highly governed way AI from a solution perspective, you know, I agree wholeheartedly with what Nick said.
Yeah. And, you know, I just want to point out this word judgment, it keeps coming up, right? And I don't think people really understand what it means. I think, you know, what does that mean? The boss is going to make all the calls. You know, I just want to talk, and a lot of people might already experience this, but when you use AI, I using it every day, and I see 2 areas where, you know, the AI just doesn't do it. One, I'm going to talk about context drift, right? So I'm building context, and companies using AI are building context every day. Every conversation, every Slack message, every email, every Zoom recording, that's going into your knowledge base. It's creating context. And when workers, as we try to output things, sales presentations, webinar scripts, like, you know, anything that we're trying to produce, it's using that data. And so how do you keep data canonical? Like, what data stays canonical? What data is being referenced as hundreds or thousands of workers are using that source data to produce outputs every single day? So to run our business, we had to provide hundreds, if not thousands, of humans in the loop that are very specifically trained on those workflows and the outputs required and the inputs that are coming in, just to manage context. The human then, who's pulling context and building things using AI, and the agents, whether they're autonomous or with the human, are also making those judgments. You got to read that sales deck before you send it out. You have to personalize it. You have to really think through. You can't do what what I'm seeing some people do, where they produce something and they send it to you and you're like, oh my God, you made this in 30 seconds and you send it to me to do the iterations on it, right? So it's a lot of iterating time on the outputs. So the human's doing that, but then, so it's really about that judgment that you talked about. It's that iterating what the outputs are, but then also managing, I think, the context on the other side. We've also been putting humans in the loop between the AI and that iterating human, depending on the workflow. So if you're dealing with a regulated industry like we just talked about, we want to start to catch that, because that's where we catch context drift as well. So Nick, I think you're right on the money. Like, still think it's going to be a long time before we can put multiple agents managing context and output, but we're still going to need human eyeballs on it.
Correct.
Right? And then connect to the relationships. I still think relationships are important. Okay. We're moving in time. I want to move forward. The fourth break, right? So SaaS adoption was relatively uniform across industries. AI is not. We talked about that, right? Manufacturing is at 47% smart factory adoption, and how much of that is really running in production. JP Morgan is running 450 AI use cases. And meanwhile, a lot of the mid-market companies that we speak to, they haven't even started. Maybe they've had a few pilots. They've got bolt-ons in their, Microsoft 365, but they haven't even started. So huge, stratification there. Jason, so across the portfolios that you're seeing, are you seeing different industries adopt at radically different rates? What does that asymmetry look like in your modeling?
Absolutely. And I think this is the parallel that probably is closest to other kind of technological enabling, inflection points of the past. It's kind of the usual suspects. Smaller companies, startups, companies in the SMB space where the decision-making velocity is much faster. They are faster, if not to adopt, faster to experiment. And then, Nick and Rod both touched on this, but the compliance and regulatory needs and just risk aversion in the larger enterprises tends to skew to slower decision-making, slower experimentation, which again is probably, like I said, the closest parallel to all these other movies that we've seen before. A little bit different, but largely the same if you look at the macro trends.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody, want to jump in on that? I think I'm going to skip one of our segments. So just want to roll through here.
The only thing I'd say is bouncing off what Nick said, and I think that was great advice for the partner community. If I was a partner, the more you understand about your customer, the more successful you're going to be. I would be looking at if you're talking about compliance in a complex industry like healthcare or finance or whatever, you don't want a general compliance person. You want someone from that industry who can absolutely understand what's going on. And I think one of the things that AI is going to create is an even faster move amongst the partner community to looking at specific vertical markets, maybe multiple vertical markets within a single partner, but that deep understanding of how that market operates is going to be incredibly important to the success of many partners, particularly as they get into the mid and large corporate marketplaces.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, we're burning a lot of time. We've spent it's been a great conversation. I'm actually going to skip one of our segments and move to our close to let you guys move on with your day. So, but before we close, I just want to say, each one of you came into this conversation with something in your head, an insight, a conviction, a warning. We've covered so much ground, but I guarantee there's something, sitting in each one of you that hasn't had an opening yet. So, what's the one thing maybe you haven't said that you think, the audience needs to hear? I'm just going to open the floor.
Jason, go ahead, man. Put you on the spot.
Thanks, Nick.
Don't worry,
You know,
Ken.
the one thing that I'll say is, you know, AI can be overwhelming. It can be intimidating. There is a lot of noise out there. Again, I'm going to again blame maybe the marketing community associated with AI. But at the end of the day, it's important to not lose sight of the fact that it is a huge opportunity to, you know, redefine and add additional value that you can deliver to your customers. So, you know, it's important to take a more practical stance rather. Like I said, so I've mentioned it a few times, is, you know, try adopting it for your own personal workflows. That can kind of, you know, mute some of the noise out there and gets you a little bit more of a practical understanding of where and how it can impact. And then from there, you have a much more stable foundation to start thinking about how you can apply it to your business as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rod, if a channel partner was listening, how, and they know they need to move, what's the single first best step they can make this week?
It depends where their team are with AI. But I would provide the tools both within the workplace and at home for your team to use AI in all aspects of their life. I would monitor that very carefully. That will tell you which members of your team are actually most likely to be able to move forward with you in an AI environment. And I would look very carefully at where you are business-wise, picking up on what I said earlier. Build specific expertise in specific sectors.
Yeah.
That will be invaluable for you. I think AI is going to kill the generalist.
Yeah. There's a whole other podcast for us. Nick, for business leaders in any industry, sorry, if I got my questions mixed up. Nick, if a partner came to Zoom tomorrow and says we want to build an AI practice on your platform, where do you point them first?
First and foremost, I think Jason and Rod both said it. Use the technology yourself. Don't be afraid to use it, because once you start using it, you'll understand the fundamentals. So first, use the technology. Second, I think, Cosmo, you touched on this. As you get really good at using it, allow your AI agent to understand your contextual learning and to understand you, and train your digital twin so that it has the ability to articulate you as an individual. And so if a partner was knocking on my door, first of all, encourage them to use the platform themselves. Second, accelerate your learning. Accelerate your practice. Don't be a generalist. Be somewhat segmented. And then build your business practice around that. That would be my kind of 3 checkboxes.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. A lot of the consulting that we have to do is, you know, we get called in because someone says, hey, we want to transform our business using AI. And what they're thinking in their mind is, we want to agentify some workflows, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about this, and they start off with operations use cases, and then maybe we'll get into the product discussion. But then, you know, when you change your business model, you're not just saying, hey, we're creating a whole bunch of new value. It's not like launching new products or making your services better. It's you need to actually transform your business as well, right? So what is your messaging? What do your target audience segments look like now? Are there some that are better? Have new audiences emerged that you couldn't operate in those areas before? We work with one company who is in the we have an AI technician agent. So imagine all of those technicians across the world. They fix restaurant equipment. They fix HVAC units, right? They're the guys on the roof of the bank when the heating goes down, and they're on the roof fixing it. They got to show up to. They get dispatched. They show up to a business. They find the unit. They identify the unit. They try to pull any documentation if they don't know how it works. They diagnose the problem. Maybe they have to order parts. In that process, they have to check warranty. Someone's checking warranty and credit, the credit availability for the customer. They have to get the part ordered. They might have to leave and go pick up the part, or wait a day, or wait a week for a part and come back and then do that repair, right? So there are a lot of companies in that service that workflow. There's the vendor, there is individual service companies, there are third-party enablement companies, that provide the training to those service technicians that are not part of the technician company. There are warranty and financial vendors that manage that whole process and provide infrastructure. And so when we go in and we look at a workflow, we're not just looking at an internal workflow or a product. We might be looking not just cross-functionally, but across multiple suppliers. And the company says, hey, wait a minute. You mean we can check the warranty, we can do the credit check, we can have the schedule the next meeting, we can walk through get our technician that would take a year to get trained with another technician in the van. We can have them out on calls themselves in 2 months with this twin, because the AI is kind of walking them through everything. So you're reimagining that multiple workflows and your business, and that takes, that's why we also provide the consulting. So there's also a business layer on top of that, because it allows you to look at your segments, look at your business model, look at your markets, and find your growth opportunities. All right, that was supposed to be short, and I added a story there that made it longer. All right, so let me just go to the close. I'm going to end it there. Rod, thanks for your 30 years. You're going to keep going. I know I'm going to be working with you probably another 20 or 30, God knows how long. Nick, thanks for letting us see inside a real pivot. I mean, I love listening to your stories, and now you're bringing the Zoom stories. It's so interesting. All that you're not letting too much out of the bag, but just getting a glimpse into how the organization works. It's amazing. Jason, thanks for what you do, all your insights. I love the perspective from the product all the way, the portfolio work. Always bringing good stuff to the table. What I would say is to the audience is, I would just say, if I were to give you one specific action this week, not next week, not next quarter, pick one workflow in your business that's still priced by seats or run by humans, or whether it's product or operationally, it's a pain point that you need to improve. Talk to the person actually doing the work, not the executive who's sponsoring the workflow, but the person doing it. Ask them 3 things. First, what is the AI handle for them right now? Like, how are they using it? Are they using, Claude that they're not supposed to be using? Is there something bolt on? Second, what does the AI get wrong? And third, what still requires, the humans to weigh in on? Those answers will give you a sense of where your AI opportunity is, or even where your AI risk is. Either way, you're going to know where to move. And if you know someone in any industry still treating AI as next year's problem, as you can hear from the conversation, this is already past. Like, this is going. You need to be in the game, or you're probably not going to survive. Send them this episode. The evidence is here. The window's open, and the pattern isn't a prediction anymore. It's record. Thank you for listening. This is no AI theater. Real conversations, as you can see, with the people implementing AI on the ground. I'm Cosmo Mariano, helping you run like an AI business operator. We'll see you in the field. Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cosmo.
Thanks, Cosmo.
Thanks, guys. All right. Talk to you soon. We can stay on because I'm just going to cut it there. Guys, that went long.
I'm going to go sell something now.
You got to go kill something?
I got to go sell something.
Oh, something. I'm so sorry to keep you on long, but holy smoke, you guys were amazing. That was, I don't know if it's going to be super exciting, but it's super interesting. Like, I can't believe how much ground you guys covered.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for having us. Great meeting you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure I'm holding you late on meetings. Have a good one. I'll reach out. I'll send you details. Take care, buddy.
Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.